Good morning. This is the Innovation Conversation. How you doing, Tom?
Good, Kevin. How are you?
Good. Good to see you. So I want to sort of just chat a little bit this morning about something I know very little about, simply because I've never been part really of a big organization of any scale, and you have, which is, so recently Dave Clark announces that he's leaving Amazon, and he's been there for a long time, decades. Around the same time, Sheryl Sandberg announces she's leaving Facebook, Meta. She's been there a long time. And I'm curious, when that kind of stuff happens, what kind of, and we can talk about the relative merits of their tenures, but what does it mean in terms of like the culture when somebody who has been there for so long has been so influential within the organization? I mean, Sheryl Sandberg, forced Facebook to grow up in a lot of ways, right?
Totally.
So what does that do within an organization when that happens?
Yeah, I mean, you think like to Larry and Sergey, right, at
Right.
Google, right, and they, how long they were there and built that culture around them. It obviously takes a big piece of the DNA and the culture and kind of the soul of the company in some cases out, takes it away. But if the leader has fostered that culture broadly, has built, kind of a team around them to carry that culture forward, and it's, well embedded, around the company. I don't think, yes, it takes some away, but in a way, it almost helps the company go to that next level, right? Where, okay, we embody this, we are this, and we can be bigger, than the impact of this individual person or these co-founders, or whatnot. But it's you think Steve Jobs at Apple, right? I mean, there's so many of those, where culture is built around. And I think you see around an iconic leader, or even if it's not an iconic CEO, an iconic member of the leadership team, or an important leader of the membership team. And I think it definitely takes some away. But the good, strong companies and good, strong cultures just thrive right through that.
It is interesting. I mean, and it's one big difference is that Facebook still has, Zuckerberg's still there,
Yeah.
right? So their iconic leader, for better or for worse, remains in place. Jassy is relatively new to the CEO thing. In both cases, based on the reports that have come out so far, the companies are seem to be reorganizing those number two jobs in terms of not putting one person in to replace them. Organizationally, is that usually the better way to go, which is to not move one person in, but rather kind of diffuse the responsibilities?
It probably depends on the individual and the responsibilities they've accumulated over time, right? Somebody like Sheryl or Dave that have been in senior roles in the company for a period of time take on more stuff as they go, right? And especially if it's an area that you're directly responsible for an area, but there's this contiguous area that it interrelates with yours. And to bundle them, at least at a leadership level, makes sense. And so you kind of accumulate that stuff as you go up. It gets harder to find a leader to fill those shoes, sometimes when that leader that accumulated all of that stuff left. So in that case, let's find the right logical, organizational, configuration or boundaries below, and we'll build out at that level. And it sounds like, at Amazon, for sure, they're figuring that out now, and Andy's taking a more active role in the areas where Dave was, to get a good sense for, what's happening there, what are the needs, what are the relative, skill sets of the team, and then making the ongoing kind of structural leadership decisions from there.
It was interesting, especially in the case of Dave Clark and Amazon. There were two narratives, right? One narrative was that he was just bored and wanted to move on. I mean, he'd been doing it for so long, he wanted to do something different. and clearly he had arranged something different because he announced his next gig so quickly. Clearly he had that book before he left. And but the other narrative was that, well, you know, he was in charge of all the stuff that overbuilt, right? And he was in charge of the stuff where they were having labor issues, and therefore he had basically outgrown his welcome. The latter always seemed a little bit, I mean, I guess, well, here's the question. I mean, which one sounds more likely to you, or are both possibly true? And also, but if, I mean, nothing he was doing, I mean, it wasn't like he was doing what he was doing in a vacuum. Everybody knew what he was doing. I mean, the board had to sign off on, I mean, he wasn't just leasing or building warehouse space on his own, right? He was doing something that everybody knew about.
Yeah, agreed. In that role at Amazon, with everything that he was responsible for, right? He's not doing that all on his own. He's leading it.
Right.
He has significant input to the decision.
Right.
Significant weight in the ultimate making of the decision, and the confidence of the team and the charge of the team of leadership and the shareholders and the board to go out and do that, go out and execute on that. You know, and he executed to the plan. So, you know, I mean, it's hard to say that, you know, that his release was wholly based on his performance. That just doesn't seem, you know, again, because he's part of this broader, you know, decision-making machine and execution machine. But yeah, there's no way that he got that gig and announced it within 3 days. So, you know, it's probably some combination thereof. You know, he was probably, you know, getting to the point in his Amazon tenure where he was interested in something else. And this opportunity came along and he was excited about it. And, you know, it's the time to make the transition.
Is it likely, I mean, there were a lot of reports that he left tens of millions of dollars on the table, right, in terms of compensation. Mm-hmm. And there was that, and then there was also the fact that his new gig is not directly competitive with most of what Amazon does, but there's some overlaps in terms of logistics. Is it likely, or at least possible, that the situation was, listen, I'm going to leave this tens of millions of dollars of compensation on the table, but you're going to let me go work for these guys and run this company, even though there are some conflicts? Is that, am I overthinking it?
I mean, I don't think that, I don't think Amazon would make the decision. I mean, I don't know. I mean, who knows? That's down behind closed doors.
Right.
You know, I'm sure, clearly there was a discussion around what Dave was going to go do, and, you know, how competitive or not competitive it was. And Dave got the okay to go do it. There's no way that he, you know, left, without the endorsement of Andy and likely the board. At that senior level, the board probably even had to say, yeah, that's cool. You know, I mean, you get to that level in a company like Amazon, that, you know, and you just, the stakes are high. There's always a lot of money on the table ahead of you.
Right.
There's also been a lot of money that's come off the table. As any executive at that level, you know, you've been well compensated for a number of years as you've contributed to the company. And, you know, anytime you are to leave, you're leaving a big sum on the table.
Right.
But you're a high stakes player, you're proven, and you bring that resume to where you're going. And where you're going, you know, usually there's a pretty good deal there also. You know, I have no idea, you know, what comp's going to be like, but you're going into something that's a relative startup, you know, versus Amazon, although there's $3 or whatever billion in sales that they are. I'd love to have a startup at that size. You know, but, you know, it's a much more entrepreneurial thing. You probably, you know, wanted to go do that, and, you know, you're going to get a bunch of equity and the right amount of cash, and it's going to be a good deal. So I'm sure he made a decision that he was very comfortable with financially. And I don't think it was, okay, well, we're going to save money on, you know, paying you this stock comp. Yes. So go compete.
That's true. Tens of millions of dollars to Amazon is a rounding error, right? So that's right.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Although,
yeah, it is.
Stock price plummeting right now.
You know? Right. Yeah, it's worth a little bit less now. Well, yeah, but while that is small dollars for Amazon, Amazon is incredibly frugal and incredibly sharp, and you know, that amount of money matters, you know, to Amazon.
So it occurs to me, what are the odds that you think that he pulls what I'll call a Mark Lohr, and he goes to work for this company for you know, X number of years, builds up whatever its logistics expertise, and then sells it back to Amazon for a phenomenal amount of money? 50-50?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about the business to know how it might fit Amazon's. Well, yeah, nobody really knows what Amazon's future is, but you understand kind of the Amazon value proposition and how they think about the expansion of their business and the expansion of their customer value proposition over time, and their definition of customer, how that changes over time from customers to sellers to partners to all that. So I don't know.
I'm probably over caffeinated. So, but I mentioned Mark Lohr. So I do want to ask you about the story this week that Mark Lohr's new food delivery startup called Wonder has just, you know, a couple $100 million worth of new investment money, valued at 3.5 billion, according to the Wall Street Journal, is still operating in, you know, what they call a cluster of New Jersey suburbs, 130,000 households. So it's not exactly
right, it's not very big.
rolled out, right? And I think this is fascinating to me because it is such a small test. He says it would have been valued for a lot more than $3.5 billion had the stock market not been, you know, in such turmoil, and we've now apparently effectively entered.
Valuations are down, that's for sure.
Right. So, but it sounds to me like their value proposition, their business model is built on the idea of sending trucks to people's homes or offices where a chef will prepare meals for you. It's like a meal kit business on steroids, and we all know meal kit businesses were having trouble. So I'm wondering, does the business model make any more immediate? I'm sure there's a logic in there somewhere. Does the business model make immediate sense to you, or are you maybe as mystified as I am at this point?
Well, I mean, I'd have to learn more about the business model, learn more about like how customers engage in the service, how they pay for the service. Is it a subscription service where there's a base fee? Are you only paying for the meals? What is the pricing for the meals, right? How does that all work? I mean, any business that routes its service to homes, right? So whether it's a delivery route or whatever, but you have this, you know, this cost center that is moving, you know, around between homes. There's the cost of that times the time that it's out there, right? And then there's the yield you get off of what it gets from those stops. You know, generally you got to get, you know, a number of stops per hour in most any business, right, to be able to make the economics of that business work. Now, you know, I don't know what the economics are, like what is the gross ticket of any of these stops? What is the margin structure around these stops? You know, how dense can they make the stops? Like when they do stop, is it a 10-minute, you know, I'm finishing off the meal and you get your meal, and then 5 minutes later I'm at the next one and it's 10 minutes and you get your meal? And, you know, I mean, that's all the stuff that contributes into the economics. So, you know, at a high level, you know, it's hard to see how the economics work. But one thing that Mark has proven is, and he did it at Quidsi and he did it at Jet, is you can build a business that is working toward an economic promise or an economic premise, you know, and show the right amount of evidence toward that working, that you can get it sold, you know, for a lucrative outcome. And I think, you know, where he sold his last two companies, you know, Quidsi to Amazon and Jet to Walmart, I think both of those acquirers, you know, feel like they got good value for what they paid. So, you know, where this is valued, what it is and who would acquire it, I don't know. Or maybe it does stay on its own. Yeah. So I guess a long answer to say, I don't know if the economics work, but Mark has a really good track record of innovating, getting kind of outside the comfort zone or outside the kind of normal, not normal, but kind of preconceived notions of what should and shouldn't work. And he's had some success. So I wouldn't count him out, but it'll be interesting to see how it evolves.
Absolutely. I mean, I would, yeah. I mean, I think you're absolutely right not to count him out. It is interesting. And I think it's going to be interesting going forward, just in a broader sense, how the economic upheaval we're facing right now, right, affects innovation, even in a broader sense at every company, right? I mean, it's like you've got inflation, which is really putting a lot of pressure on margins. People are trying to think, and if as is, it seems to be more expected every day, companies, where we go into a recession, it's going to be really interesting to see how companies move forward with whatever their innovation plans are and whatever money they have allotted to innovation. I mean, tell me if I'm right or wrong on this. Companies have put X number of dollars. When companies put X number of dollars into the pot for what they would call innovation, I think in a lot of cases, A, it's not enough money, number one, and number two, I'm not sure it's always innovation in the best sense of that term. But the kind of financial stresses that we're looking at right now means they'll probably take some money out of that pot, number one, and number two, will then we'll start using phrases like it's time to get back to fundamentals, right? That's where everybody always goes, which in so many ways I think is going to, while it may seem like a short-term a good decision, it will put those companies potentially at risk from disruptors, right? Yeah. Which because they're going to use the moment to say, no, we're going to put more money in the pot. We're going to focus on real innovation. And I'm not just talking about Amazon here, but certainly Amazon will think that way. So when we come out the other end of this thing, as we inevitably will, we have more market share, we have more share of stomach, and we're better able to compete with the companies that said it's time to get back to fundamentals. Am I misstating any of that?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's harder to invest in R&D and innovation in times like we're in now, and probably going to be in for a little bit here. I always come back to customer centricity, and when you as a company and your customers are faced with what we're faced today with, the anxieties around, our nest egg shrinking, our access to debt, to go buy a home is tougher. Inflation is, totally kicking our butts. It's the customer's in a tough spot right now. So, anytime you can take those dollars to make the experience better for the customer in a time like today, you have an opportunity to really gain loyalty and gain share. So that may be investing in price, right? It may be, maybe paying a little bit more for labor, where, it's going to be important for your customer experience to be able to, really kind of nail it with your customers in the near term. That's not necessarily R&D, but it's a good investment in, solidifying your relationship with your customer.
Right.
However, if you can also put it toward innovation that will provide better value for your customers and help ease the pain and anxiety that they have today, that's R&D really well spent. And it probably has even more impact, than it would at a time where, customers flush, customers happy, you could, it's just, I think you really got to think about applying dollars to your customer, and you're either going to improve your service today and your value today, on their behalf with your investment, or you're going to provide an innovation that's going to take them to a place that's better. And you just got to really be thoughtful about that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that what companies have to do, I mean, first of all, everything they need to do needs to bring them closer to their customer, not distance them from the customers. But I also think it's critical to understand that even in tough times, aspirations have not gone away. right? It's not like people who had all these aspirations 6 months ago, those aspirations have vanished. They're harder to achieve now. And it's the retailers who get closer to their customers, understand the aspirations, and find new ways to help customers achieve them. Those are more likely to be the winners, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. Absolutely.
Good. I love it when we end by you agreeing with me. Anyway, thank you as always for doing this, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Sounds great, Kevin.
Right, take care.
Have a good one.
Yeah.
Bye.